Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Scrutinizing Sundays show. Uh-oh, I gotta fix the looping sound. That's not good. Okay, we do it live, folks. So, today we're going to be getting into some very interesting things. At least they're interesting to me. And so hopefully I can make them interesting to you. I'm going to take some lessons of this thing I'm doing, the whole building the business thing, and I'm going to impart some of this wisdom to you guys, hopefully. My name is Sam Stevenson. For those who do not know who I am a designer. I draw plans, I put lines on paper, and I help people build houses. My background is in engineering and stuff like that. So I take the technical stuff that I know and the business stuff that I know, and I try to extract economic energy and then fuel my world and fuel the worlds of people around me so that we can all learn things and grow and go do fun things in life that we all want to do. So, quick shout out to the one and only Will Stevenson from the DGen Roundtable in the chat. Like the smash button, folks. That's right. Support the channel, all those wonderful things. Good to have you in the chat, Mr. Will Stevenson. Feel free to shout your thoughts as we go through some things here, because we are going to be going through some things here. So, let's get started with some lessons from the past week. What happened over the last week? Well, I worked, I drew, I maintained, I did the stuff that requires me to be in business. And at the end of the week, I got through. And, over these past few weeks, we've been talking a lot about productivity and time and how to extract more out of what you've already got. How to be, not necessarily how to be more productive, but, I have bought time and I'm trying to maximize what I do with the time that I've bought. And I'm in a different stage now of business where I'm no longer scrambling to survive. Now I'm scrambling to keep up. And as a function of that, like, I don't have the same pressures on myself that I did before. And so now the trick is, how do I keep grinding, with those pressures removed? It's like, how do I stay focused on what my goal was? And the goal is the grind. The goal is to keep going. The goal is to keep growing. And so, yeah, let's talk about how we're going to do that here. Shout out to Eugene. Welcome again, Mr. Eugene. Good to have you. And also shout out to Jenna Nelson. Good to have you, Jenna. Glad you're here supporting. Hopefully you can learn some wonderful things and we can all become better by the end of this thing. So this is specific to the design industry, sort of, but you could extrapolate the lesson out to whatever industry you guys are working in and whatever businesses you're running, whatever you're doing in your lives. The thing I had to think about this week, because I experienced some dramatic changes in a few particular sets of plans. And for those that don't understand, my design process and most people's design process is to change the most and to form the most at the beginning of the process. And the farther down you get into producing a set of plans, the less you want to change it, because there's more risk of messing up some of the formalities, some of the stuff that's built into the product. So it makes it more difficult when you change stuff farther in the process. And I had a few projects where things were quite rearranged at the end of the project. And it was just, it's really not a ton of time or not a ton of work, but it's a high risk. And so you have to slow down, really think about what you're doing so you don't mess stuff up. And it just got me thinking about the concept of charging for changes versus charging for a total like best customer experience product, right? So with whatever business you're running, you could, in a broad sense, you could charge a minimum that covers what, like, your costs to produce a product for everyone. And then those that want more, you could charge them extras to get the more thing. And in my particular circumstances, I would rather charge more to everyone and generally be able to produce because what we're talking about is profit percentage, right? basically the higher your profit percentage, the more value the more time you have to give all your customers. So you can generally give a better experience to everyone if you charge more. That's generally the idea. And so in my case, I was thinking about, man, I could I could charge less for most people and basically maintain a higher gap between the customer experience and the cost to produce. Uh, and basically, I would make a little bit less money, but like they would get the same level of experience anyway. So the thing to think about is, would you rather solve like you're basically building in future work into the price. That's what you're doing. So if I know I'm going to have 100 people that come to me throughout the year that want a thing, and I know that 30 of them are going to want, they're basically going to make not make my life harder, but they're going to, for some extenuating circumstance or whatever, need more of my time. It serves me and it serves everyone to just charge more so that I have a bigger pool of resources to pull from. It's just like it's the do you want to work with people that will pay for value of an experience, or do you want to work with people that just want to pay for the least possible thing? So that's sort of the thought. You could apply that to your own business in, you know, whatever way. And it pretty much only applies if you're running a business. It doesn't really apply if you're not. But shout out to Centurion, Mr. 54 Cent. Good to have you, Centurion, the entrepreneurial farmer. This guy is cranking out the production of, oh shoot, I forget the product you're making. I want to say it's hay or alfalfa. I think it was alfalfa. This guy's running a farm. He's making good things happen. That's for sure. Got to meet him in Oregon. That was a great thing. So good to see you, Centurion. Thank you for supporting. Feel free to ask questions if you got them. All right. So again, here's another thought specific to my industry, that a builder needs momentum, but you could apply this to whatever your circumstances are and whoever you're working with. People do projects in life, and when people do projects, projects have momentum to them, right? So if you know a guy who's trying to accomplish a goal and he's taking actions and he's taking steps towards accomplishing the goal, if you become someone who can add to his momentum, then you become very valuable. And in my circumstances in my business, I was talking to somebody about, well, actually, it was unrelated to design. I was talking about a project, a home build that was going on. And they were describing one of the most valuable things as a builder is not getting stopped up by stupid things. Because and this is true for any project that you're going to go through in life. If you because projects have all these steps, all these milestones, all these things going, like you're juggling 10 things at once. If you are fresh and you're in the thing, it's way easier to have 10 things running around in your head at once if you're just actively doing it. But let's say you stopped doing your thing for 2 weeks and couldn't do anything with it, and then had to come back to it and pick it up and start again. All that momentum is gone. All the freshness is in your head is gone. So in terms of like value and, you know, as someone who is managing a project, if you can step in and help them maintain their momentum, super duper valuable. So that is the thing. I did not think about that at that particular angle. And I'm actually really grateful that I was having the conversation with the gentleman that I was, because that's like that's another selling point that I have. I didn't realize. So a lot of my company, right? Lightning Bolt Rapid Designs, a lot of what I do is around fast communication, fast back and forth, making things turn around, making things move forward, making things happen. And so I didn't realize that a big value proposition of what I was doing was that builders are not running through that thing where it's like, well, I forgot what this person was even about. I forgot what they were doing. Right. So that's pretty interesting, that that's a value added that you can give to lots of people in different ways. So that's pretty cool. Let me open up the chat here. I got to full screen this because this is hard to read. Cassie Kelly. Hello, Cassie. Good to have you. Glad you're here. I hope you're learning some valuable things about momentum and changes and things like that. Thank you for the support. Centurion, working on composting this winter. Okay. One of my biggest expenses is fertilizer. It's hard to squeeze more dollars out of the ground, but if I reduce expenses and make the same money, I get more profit. Yes, that is correct. And I got a talking point about the concept of higher income versus lower expenses. We're going to come back to that. So that's a great point. And hell yeah, exactly. Awesome. Mr. Centurion is thinking through the process, how to make all the things happen. Cool. We're going to come back to that. So maintaining brand. Okay. So I'm getting to a point in business where so you start out, you don't know anyone, you don't have any prospects. You're just trying to tell everyone about a thing you're doing. And you're trying to, at the same time, get a cash flow going so that you can pay your bills and exist, right? So at the beginning, you just do anything. You're just a whore, right? If you need me to draw a window, I'll draw you a window. If you need me to draw an elevation, I'll draw you an elevation. If you need me to draw, your wife in a bathtub, I will probably not do that because that's not my kind of work. But, you get the idea. So in that world, you just have to let everything through the door to get the cash flowing. Once you get enough cash flowing at the right numbers and you've got some money set aside or some money available to you, some cash reserve, you can start to make decisions based on your risk tolerance, right? Some people would never consider quitting a job and starting another one without, $60,000 in the bank account. Some people are willing to do that with only $2,000 in the bank account, right? Everybody has different risk tolerances. I happen to be somebody with high risk tolerances, which is part of the reason that I'm still in this business game doing the business thing. But so when there's some cash reserve, you can make decisions that are going to move you along the leverage curve faster because you're willing to take the risk. So in this particular case, I met a builder whom I will not name that I initially liked and vibed with, right? We had a good aura going. And I basically so in my funnel to onboard a builder that's someone who wants to work with me, I give them this cute little free 3D model of something they designed of a house of theirs in the past, right? I give them this valuable thing. They're happy. And it opens the door for a conversation on they're like, hey, what do you actually do again? And so when I had that conversation in person with this person, I was effectively selling on what I do. I draw plans. And so I would rather, I'm not here to make you models and stuff. If you draw with other people, that's something I could do, but that's not the highest leverage thing. So, basically we're going down this path and I didn't get but 2 or 3 sentences in about what I do before he was like, hey, can you draw something for me? I've got a project. Do you want a project? And I said, yep, I'm going to shut my mouth, stop selling. You stop selling when they're sold and you just do the thing because that's the end goal, right? And so he gave me the project thing. It turns out it was a commercial remodel thing, which is not in the wheelhouse of what I'm used to doing. But it's the way he was describing it. It was super simple. So I was like, okay, well, this is something I could entertain. Mostly interested in solving a problem for a fellow professional that I'm interested in building a relationship with. And one of the things came up that was basically that my price was falsely inflated to basically make up for the margin of the builder. So for those that don't understand, in the building world, if you want a house built and you don't know how to build a house, or you don't have a network of people who are all the subs, there is a role for the builder. It costs them time, it costs them money, it costs them energy to organize everything that it takes, get all the materials, send the emails back and forth. It's literally a job to organize the building of the house, which means the price of your house is not just a function of the total sum of all the guys who did the drywall, the flooring, the carpets, the painting, the doors, the windows, the framing. Like, it's not the sum of those things. It's more complicated than that. So, a lot of people have a misconception that they see some people build houses online and they're like, oh, this is so cute. And like, there's a fad in the past 2 years, 3 years, a little bit more than that, of like cute couples. They're like, hey, we're going to go build our own house. And they make a YouTube channel and they're super cute and they build their house. And then at the end, they like figure out how hard it is. And then they like get divorced and like, there's this whole thing. And it's real fun. And so, or like the dog dies. It's just it's a hoot. So I bring that up because people, every time they figure out, holy shit, it's actually like, even if they're not doing the work themselves, it's actually a lot of work to build a house. Therefore, you should pay someone if you are not going to do it yourself. That is what a builder is for. And so people see the builder and they're like, oh, he's just marking up all these subs prices. Therefore, our house is unnecessarily more expensive. No, you're paying his time. That's how he gets billed. That's like how he bills his time, right? So, knowing that's how a builder works, you can think to yourself that, hey, excuse me, okay, I ought to pay the builder some money for the services he's providing me. Now, it's up to the builder to be able to sell the value of his job. And for most people that don't value what the builder is doing, it's hard. The builder has to be like, hey, do you know the 50 different subs that it takes to do this thing? Do you have their phone numbers? Do you have their connections? Do you know what their work is supposed to look like? Do you know how to like, negotiate with them on stuff? Do you know how to like organize material deliveries and drop offs and like all the ins and outs of working with a building supplier and all the stuff? Like, no, you don't know any of that, right? So that value must be paid for to the builder. So this particular guy, this is all weaving back into this particular thing. This guy was not aware of how to charge and how to make that sale to a customer. And so as a business practice, his margin is hidden in my price. And basically there was like a really fast decision-making thing. It was like I was thrown in on a phone call. It was a mess. And essentially what happened was my price was falsely inflated to like cover his ass so that he didn't have to sell his thing, basically. And I was like, I thought about it on the whole drive home. I was like, I don't want to ever do that again. And I have worked with someone like that in the past. In my first construction business, when I was drafting plans, I had a contractor that did the same thing. And it's really, really awkward because like what you're doing is lying, and like that's not something that I want to participate in. And like when I was doing the first business, I definitely didn't really know what I was doing in the industry and all this stuff. I didn't know how any of this worked. But for example, you go to a site visit with the contractor, the homeowners, and the designer. And the designer's trying to figure out the scope of the project. The contractor's trying to figure out the scope of the project so they can get a price. And the homeowner's trying to figure out how much a project they can do because of the budget they have. And so you're all trying to have this conversation. And basically, for contractors that aren't willing to show that they're marking up something, they have a conversation with the designer and say, hey, give me a higher price than what you're actually going to charge. That way I can just show on the invoice or whatever that like, I'm not charging them, right? It makes them look good falsely. It's false goodwill. And that's crappy. Now there are some builders that don't do that. They're like, hey, I'm going to mark this up to 15%. Today, Junior. I'm going to mark this up 15%, or I'm going to mark this up 30%. Whatever their deal is, up front. Like, you're either okay with it or you're not. Some builders, depending on the types of clients they're trying to get, they won't charge anything until they have a contract. They have a sold, like they're building the house, right? It just depends on how you want to run your business structure. And like the costs of all that the work is covered in the building price. I guarantee you, because they're in business, right? You're paying for it one way or another. So what are this all okay, this is all about like one particular topic, which is maintaining your brand. So this particular builder, I'm at a point where I'm confidently going to tell this guy, I don't want to work with you. Like I'll use nicer words than that, but I am going to like this particular guy is just not, it's not going to be conducive for my brand to continue putting my name and my label along with a guy who's doing that kind of behavior. It's like it's a personality thing. Like you've just gotten to the point where that's what you have to do. Okay, well, I just don't want to associate with you. So that's what I'm going to do. And so you get to think to yourself, like, do you have people like that you work with? Do you have stuff like that in your network that you don't want to associate? Because your brand is very important, especially if you're going to scale. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Chat shout out first. We got, let me open this up so I can read it. Mr. Will Stevenson. Sam is a high risk tolerant, can confirm. Yes, Will can confirm. If there's a mound of dirt and we're pit biking around and there's a slight opportunity to take a shovel and carve it into a jump that's just a weird size, you know, who knows what we're going to do. And we got Mr. Wyatt. What's up, bro? Busy, but checking in. Good to hear it. Mr. Wyatt MG is hard working, hard charging out there in California. And it's great to have you on the show. Good to have you checking in. Mr. Wyatt is making things happen. That's for darn sure. And I'm looking forward to potentially being a part of his making things happen. But we'll see what life can bring us. So on the subject of the brand and the tolerance and working with people and not working with people, if you intend on having employees or anything like that in the future, your employees are going to be as impacted by the shittiness of whoever you decide to work with as you are. At the engineering firm I worked at, the idea of the company was not, hey, let's charge a high price and give a very valuable product. It was let's not risk losing any people and make sure we take all the possible jobs and all the possible customers. That way we can survive. That was the mentality of where I was working. So the problem with that is if you let anyone in the door, then you let anyone in the door. And some customers will want to take 80 to 90% of your time or energy, and they're not paying you hardly anything. And there were plenty of those. And what that does to your culture is that it makes employee feel like my boss is not willing to do a difficult thing in order to filter out this shitty person. And now I have to deal with shitty person. Now, when you're an employee, sometimes like people are going to be tough in life. And a lot of business is about figuring out like, what's wrong with me that's making me difficult to work with this person. But at the same time, there are just some people you just should not associate with. So as an employee, if you want to make your employees think that you are not super concerned with what they have to deal with, then do exactly that. Just don't be concerned with what they have to deal with. And you'll get that kind of culture. Now, I happen to think that in the design industry, in this design world, right, if I'm going to hire somebody and train them to do everything that I can do in terms of drawing, this is not true. People think once they know how to draw that they can like, oh, well, I'm just going to like take these customers and I'm going to go draw for them and like lower my price or something and like give them a deal. Like I'll do so. I'll just take the customers. Right. People think that like, that's a way to run a business. And like, that might work if you intend on like not running a complex business and that's all you want to do with your life. However, there's like a whole world of what it takes to run a business and grow a business on top of like just like knowing how to draw plans, as I've learned over the past 3 years of my life. So if I want to retain an employee, and have a culture of a company that encourages people to stay, which was required for me to scale and do higher leverage things, then I must maintain a culture of a certain brand. And like that brand does not include people lying about money and lying about prices. It just don't. And so I'm not going to poison my culture with that. So that is that. All right, guys, let's talk a little bit about leverage. So back to Mr. Centurion's point here. He was talking about the, let's see, expenses. Oh, yeah, keeping expenses down to keep profit up. It is a good idea to be aware of your budget, to be aware of your expenses, to be aware of your money out of the business. Very good idea. Very good idea to maintain high value to expense ratio, right? So if I'm going to buy something, I need it to work, right? So the 3D printer I have, for example, over here behind the camera, the 3D printer, I could have bought like a Creality Ender 3, some from like $150 on Amazon or whatever. It would not have worked. Like something would have gone wrong. Like it's just like the printers do weird stuff that's just like they're just annoying, right? And so I could have decreased my expenses in that regard and gone with a printer, but that would have like sucked a bunch of my time away to try to fix this thing and make this thing work when I could have just basically bought the $600-ish one that I did. And now I have one that just works. Like it just sits there until I need it to work. And then I hit print. And just like an office printer, it prints the thing that I want. And it's taken me some time to figure out like the tweaks on like setting up files so that they print right the first time. But the machine itself does not give me problems. I make sure it's got plastic and it doesn't run out of stuff. So expenses are important. Keep an eye on your expenses. However, make sure the value to the expense ratio is still high. And the reason you always want to think about ratios is for the reason of leverage, right? I could have saved money on the printer, but I would have spent my time trying to fix the thing. Some guy wrote a great book about the balance of things and how a ledger must balance. Maybe he can plug his book in the chat, or if he's interested in promoting it, I'm not sure. But this is a very wise man. You should all follow him on Instagram. He could possibly, I think he's a mod. Yeah, he's got a wrench. Okay. So the idea of the ratio of the value to the price is very important. So be aware of your expenses, but also be aware of your income generating potential. And if you are like, figure out which one's the limiting factor. So in my case, I didn't check the numbers, but if I had to guess, I would assume 20 to 25 hours of last week was working on like drawing, was money producing time. And because it was money producing time and it was only like, so let's say it's 20 hours. Let's say it was 20 hours, right? If I did no other administrative work, no other growth stuff, no other whatever, and I just worked 40 hours a week doing that, I would have made a very large, like relatively, like sum of money, a very successful month for the business. And therefore, I ought to think about time, right? Most people don't, like they forget to factor the cost of time. And your time has value. Your time has a price. And so doing things that don't take you more time, like there's the money and the time thing, and I'll run through an example because examples are easy to remember. Okay. I live in a 620 square foot apartment, and my business, I run out of my apartment. And I was looking at my tax numbers for the whole year. And I was trying to think about, okay, like where's my office space in my apartment? Can I justify a home office deduction? What's the numbers? How much does it cost? How much does it take? Like, what's it, blah, 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 right? Trying just to figure out like, hey, where am I at? I've got like all these things, just, check myself financially. How are things doing? So I did that this last weekend. Well, I did it yesterday. And what I figured out was of the 620 square feet that I have, this room that I'm currently in has been transitioned to the studio room, and it's also being transitioned into the work room, right? And that's a function of my hour capping, and we're going to get to the atomic habits thing. But I'm trying to increase my productivity. And so a function of that is I want a focused space where the only thing I do in this room is make myself money. I just make money when I'm in this room. God damn it. And so that's what I'm interested in doing. And so I'm trying to like focus that. And so if this room is for the business, I can deduct it as a home office expense. If you're interested in like learning about what you can deduct, there's a great book by Nolo, Nolo, called Deduct It, right? I've read that at least like 3 different times in different years, and it's always being updated. But that's a great one if you want to step past just like basic business tax understanding and you want to know like how can I save money? How can I keep money, right? If I make 100K from income in the business, how do I retain more of that wealth, right? We want to have leverage to generate wealth. We want to have it to retain the wealth, and we retain the wealth by not giving it back to the government for them to burn. And we also don't we retain the wealth by not spending it on stuff that's not high value. So like those are all the things. So the room. Okay. So in this example, my rent's about $1,000 a month or whatever, but let's say that like total for easy math, if the rent was, and the reason we do the math, guys, the reason we do the math is to see if our time is worth doing a thing. Okay. So if the rent for this place for a year was $10,000 and the square footage percentage of this room versus the whole apartment, like, cause I'm trying to like figure what the price is out of my rent. That's what home office deducting is, right? So if this room is strictly business only and it was 30% of my house area, then I can actually, as a business, I can deduct $3,000 as a cost. Like I didn't have that before. So if I was a business making and I had like 100K income, then I can now say, hey, this business spent $3,000, which means there's now $3,000 less of taxable income. And if depending on what brackets you're in and whatever, that's going to be somewhere around 20-ish% like cash savings. So whatever 20% is of 3,000, which would be, oh boy, well, what's 20% of 1,000? Be 200 times 3. So $600, right? So like that saves you $600 in cash by just saying, oh, I figured out how much space I was using for business. Now I'm going to go save that money. Now, $600 might be worth it. How much time did it take you? Right? That's why you have to know when I put my time into something, what am I getting back? Right? And if you don't know that number, then you ought to figure it out because that like will determine a lot of other things. And so it's like, okay, well, if I figure the room thing will save me $600, great. Now, the thing I was considering was, well, what if I moved all the stuff out of my closet? I put it in my utility closet, and then I stored because I've got like this is kind of a lot of stuff in this room. I would like to maybe put some stuff in the closet. I mean, I can't work out of the closet. That wouldn't work very well. But like I could just get some space. I could put some stuff in there. And so I wanted to know I could move all the stuff out of there into here and save money, right? And the reason people are like, well, it's hard. How does it save money? Because taxes and stuff. When you file your taxes, that's when you see that you saved the money because you're either going to give the government more money or they're going to give you some back. And it's really hard for it to be real when you're running a business and you're going a whole year and you're like, well, like you're just not seeing the savings. Like you really feel it in tax season, but you got to put yourself in that zone and remember like, hey, when tax season happens, I'm going to feel like I'm saving money. And like, that's when it's going to happen. So I wanted to know if I add that square footage of the closet, how much money does that save me? And it was like $100 or like $200, like $260, I think was the number. And it was like, okay, right now, because we should always think about right now, what are my options, right? I could move all the stuff out of this. I'd have to set up this utility closet to hang clothes, to like do other stuff, right? To gain that area and claim it as a real business expense. I would earn or save, same thing, $260. If I go draw a plan for a few hours, like because I know my time value of money, I could easily make up that $260. So it does not behoove me to spend a few hours shopping for stuff, spending money to buy stuff to outfit the closet, which reduces the amount I'm saving, and then spending all the time moving all the stuff over into the other closet. And now that's probably a less efficient closet. I would waste time like trying to maintain my laundry and whatever. I would just it just takes more time, right? So you got to think about time. You got to think about the leverage of something you're doing. So try to figure out those numbers if you can. And if you don't know if you don't know the complex way to figure out those numbers or the simple way to figure out those numbers, then take the entire year. What is all the money I brought in? Divide it by 8,000. Because you probably could have worked. I think 8,000 is the number. I'm spacing. Number of work hours in a year: 2,000, 4,000, 8,000. What is it? I'm struggling to do the math in my head. Maybe, hey, brother Will, could you post in the chat if you're still chatting? Number of work hours in a year. It's either 2,000 or 4,000. 2K. Okay. So if there's 2,000 work hours in a year, that's like an 8 to 5 job. You could work another 8 hours on top of that. Like you just could. There is time. So your total awake human potential is around 4,000 hours a year. So take the number you brought in, divide it by 4,000, and that means that, hey, while I'm awake, this is what I'm capable of producing. If you have investments that are giving you money that don't require you time, that increases that leverage ratio, but it still takes you time. So you have to factor all those things in. So that is that whole thing. What was I talking about? Leverage, time. Yeah. So only by, I'm coming to that point. So just be aware of what your time value is. It helps you charge, helps you know how to run a business, helps you know if you're going to survive, helps you know if saving money is worth it, right? Most people limit themselves with savings. They don't think about, oh, I just had a light go out. Awesome. That's probably a lot. All right. China. Hey, so here's a perfect example, guys. I know how one of these go out. These light sets are from Amazon, probably from China, and they were cheap. And so now I have to spend more money to get different lights at some point in the future. That's a function of how useful this thing is for me. We're just changing the mood. We're just changing the lighting. So now I have to spend time though, getting rid of that one, buying a new one, setting it up, all that stuff, right? So things cost time. Be aware. Okay. Don't buy back time if you're spending more money than the time you're buying. All right. And what does that mean? Well, if my effective hourly rate was, let's say $25 an hour, if you divide it by the 4,000, total capability, then I should not pay a lady to clean. Well, that was sexist of me. Oops. I shouldn't pay a woman to come over here and clean my shit. Oops. I'm not sexist. No, I'm totally sexist. And that's okay. So I should not pay any business to come over here and clean my apartment if it costs more than $30. Let's say, how much time does it take me? I actually tracked myself this last weekend because I want to have an idea. If I spend 2 hours, I can pretty thoroughly clean my whole apartment. Therefore, if my time value of being awake and alive is $25 an hour, I should not pay more than $50 to have my apartment cleaned. If I pay more than $50, okay, let me rephrase that. Yes, I should not pay more than $50 to have my apartment cleaned because I can clean it for less money, right? It costs me and my existence $50 by spending my time to do it. Therefore, extrapolate, that's how you know your time. Now, the other thing about the time, which is what I'm going to get into here with the whole atomic habits thing, maximizing time, maximizing productivity, is that you should not engage in things that buy you more time if you're not already using the time you have. That sort of seems like common sense, but like it's also people like to buy things, and I like to buy things. I'm human. And so, like, if for example, if I if I was trying to make a justification to buy something and my time was worth a lot of money. If I bought a Uber, let's say Uber, perfect example, okay? So I need to go grocery shopping. I could pay to outsource the groceries getting to my house because it costs me time, right? If I do that, and let's say there's a certain price to it and all this, that, and the other, but I pay someone to go do that with the Uber and I get all my groceries. But while that's happening, I'm sitting on a couch, like flipping through Instagram and like sharing funny memes. If I'm doing that while I trust paid to buy back my time, it's like, well, I guess I bought my pleasure time. That's what I bought. But like, don't buy more time if you're not already using all the time you have. That does not make sense. Well, it's a silly thing to do. It does make sense because it's like, oh, I can buy freedom, basically. Um, so gotta watch out for that. So that's why I'm focusing so hard on trying to make sure that of the time I'm awake, I'm very intentional about where it goes and I'm squeezing all the productivity out of it. And so, like, that's why the Atomic Habits book is so good. And I'm gonna get to that. Hey, there's this book called Atomic Habits. It's a really good one. I just started reading it. It might be like halfway through by this point. And it's very educational about how to how to coach yourself to do stuff you think you should be doing, basically. Um, because we're all like humans and we're all like separate people inside of ourselves. Like sometimes you just tell yourself to do something and then you don't do it. Well, it's because you're negotiating with a second person. So it's about how to train ourselves behaviorally to do stuff. And it's probably pretty useful. So I'm gonna start trying to do some of that and we're gonna come to that thing. But buying time back and maxing out. Yeah. So that thing. The last lesson was my thoughts on social life leverage. All right. So if we're in the business of business, then we spend a bunch of time making money, right? But life's not all about just making money. I mean, if it is for you, then great. Then you got lots of money. That's good. But I personally would like to take my money and do stuff with it, right? It's just having the money is not the thing. I want to buy experiences. I want to buy experiences for other people. I want to buy toys. Like I want to buy things. So, you have to think about that kind of stuff. I want to spend money on going out and eating like food with friends and stuff like that. So, all the aspects of your life, if you think about it from the leverage perspective, then like you should do the highest leverage tasks in every category, right? Like, don't do anything half-assed is basically what I'm saying. And so for myself, I spent a lot of time trying to build this business and making this thing functional. And I'm like in the current apartment I am in a particular location. Like I have good logistics for going to the bar scene where I'm at here, but the bar scene takes time and it takes money. And so I think I'm more interested in right now spending less time over there, if any, and building the business. Okay. I'm in building business phase right now. And I think if I can coach myself to have a super high like productivity extraction out of the time that I have, I might buy myself more time. How would I do that? Well, I already work at home, so I don't commute, but I do go to the gym in the morning, which is not in my apartment complex. So I lose about 40 minutes to driving, which is converted into like audiobook or something. So it's not totally lost. But it is not money making time really. So there's that. And then if I travel across town to see my kids or something like that, like there are other like logistical things that could buy my time back. And so I think at this lease end, I'm going to grind on the business. I'm going to focus on the business. And I've got about another year-ish here in this apartment. And so I'll focus on the business grind. And then when it comes time to build the other pieces of my life, which a year from now, my life is hopefully going to be very different in terms of what I am capable of. And we are going to make high leverage social moves. That's certainly what I'm after. And I'm after that for multiple reasons. One, because I want a fun social life. And two, because I want to inspire those who want to be around me to have a fun social life, which includes my employees. I want to build a culture of a business that is only people who want to grind really hard and really improve their lives in a bunch of ways. That's who I want. And that because of those are the people that I want to surround myself with. I'm not super interested in everyone's different levels of advanced in different ways, but I'm not interested in normies working with normies. That's not going to support the lightning bolt. That's not going to support the rapid energy. That's not going to support the culture that I'm building. So that's that. So guys, those are my lessons. Let's go through a quick chat shout out here. What do we got? Oh boy. Where did I start off? Wyatt was checking in. Oh, we got Tam. Hello, Tam. Long time no see. Good to have you in the chat. Thanks for the support. Hopefully you're learning wonderful things today. And okay, they got a thing going back and forth with Jenna. Excellent book. Excellent book for sure. Hopefully that's the Atomic Habits one. Or you're talking about this one, The Ledger Must Balance. Yes. Good book. Rough draft currently. Awesome. Good stuff. Centurion, I think there is around 8,750 hours to work a year. Centurion, I would believe that for you, man. You're putting the hours in. Running a farm is no joke. For real. Okay, so 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year is 2,000 hours. That makes sense. Centurion, you're crazy. Absolutely. All right. Good stuff. Got the hearts from Sam. Thank you. Always Sam. Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Tam. Appreciate it. Appreciate the love. So let's get into what we're going to talk about for the next coming week. And you guys should think about what you're going to do in this next coming week, because by golly, if you do nothing, then you're going to do nothing. And then I'm going to be farther ahead than you by next week. All right. So I'm focusing this office space. That's the first thing I'm going to be finishing up today. I'm moving the TV out of the living room. I am creating this space for productivity only. I'm going to living this aside for tax reasons and for all the other all the reasons. Focus this space. Going to get through the rest of Atomic Habits, of course. There was a practice that Will and I were doing while we were climbing towers that was just super helpful. Man, we were you work 8 to 10 hour days climbing towers, and we had every second of our day was productivity in a lot of ways. And I think a large portion of that was the sort of the back and forth accountability that we had, but also we had these little books. I meant to grab one, but it's this tiny little journal you could buy at Walmart. And they're just tiny little pages. They're literally this big. And every morning we'd write in the book, be all right, these are my habits these are the things I'm doing today that are habitual, workout, shower, shave, clean, brush teeth, all of the regular things that are hey, I'm forming these things. These are my habits. And then there's the tasks, these are my progress steps. These are things I want to accomplish today. These are things that are going to move me forward in life. These are things that are going to get me more leverage, right? These things are going to make me better. I'm going to learn something here, right? And so we'd make a list of those things. But at the beginning every day, you saw that and you put it down on paper, and that made it real. And it also made it so that you don't have to think about what you're doing for the rest of the day. At the time, work was a category, right? Towers. So that was a thing. So I was oh, okay, towers, 8 to 10 hours of my day. When I'm done, I check that box and I look at my list. And the other thing we did on top of that was we'd actually, if you looked at your list, while you're sitting there having coffee at PJ's or whatever we were doing, you number the things. How important is each one of these things I need to do? That's a task. That's great, right? And you number them of importance. And then when you open the book later, you're okay, done with work. What's the next number, right? You just do that thing and you don't think about it because you've already thought about it. You already know what you need to do. You just do the thing. And the process, the habit of writing it down, checking it off, Like it's a bunch of psychological hacks. And the more I read through Atomic Habits, the more I realize how many things we were doing to hack our own brains to get us to just like go all the time. And like the habit stacking thing, like the very act of picking up the book, checking something off, being like, what's the next thing? That is a habit. And when you stack one productive habit behind another one, it makes you that much more likely to do it. And so it just takes less motivation, which makes it easier for you, right? So I'm going to try to go back to doing that. Just see what happens, right? But the actual work I'm going to work on, of course, I'm going to draw. I'm going to solve people's problems that need problem solving. That makes me money. Outside of that, I am going to focus a lot on doing a bunch of things to make my product better, which means faster, maybe more value added in like a bunch of different ways. Because I'm at a phase where I'm no longer in the starve to get work in, like get all the work in, get flow going. Now I have flow going. So now I need to focus on how awesome can I make my process? How awesome can I make my product? Because I don't want to tell the whole world about something if I'm not totally confident in it being the absolute best thing ever. So I'm going to spend more time focusing on how to make better, and then I'll go back to more. And in that, I would like to get to doing lots of these new things. Not new things. No new things. Make the product better in a bunch of ways. Front load that probably at the beginning of the week. And then hopefully by the end of the week, I would like to start 100 new leads. I'm trying to quantify a number because I've thought about it like from time perspective, like, oh, just spend 4 hours doing this thing, 2 hours doing this thing. And that's not working for me. So hopefully with the Atomic Habits thing combined and all this, that, and the other, I'm going to quantify this and be like 100 people, right? Of those 100 people, maybe one is actually going to, like maybe 5 want a model and one's going to turn into a client. Like it's not that much extra work. So I'm going to work on those things, just try to get more time, more stuff accomplished, keep the energy going, keep momentum going, keep the growth going. And yeah, that's where we're at. So thanks for everybody for coming on and watching the old Rapid Design Scrutinizing Sundays. 100% awesome action. I now journal using Telegram. Okay. Uses a good tool. That's a good tool for using that. There's probably something to be said for the electronic versus physicality and like the checking off and like, is there a way to do that in Telegram? You know what? You could probably apply the same principle. So let's say you're in Telegram, you write out your notes. You could use emojis and like thumbs up your things you've done. You could probably do the same thing. One of the potential downfalls of that, though, is that phones are a highly versatile tool. I'm just thinking out loud at this point. And so if you've got a phone and you are trying to use it to accomplish a productivity thing, but there's other stuff in your phone that sucks you away from productivity, like Instagram, I'm like, oh, maybe that works for you, maybe it doesn't. Depends. But anyway, that's all I got, guys. So thanks for coming on. I'll see you on the next one. Let's take it out with some music by the one and only Green Observer.
That's the code.